Pegi Nashu Nyamchibe, Sondu, Podishune, Tanade, Jugdomgi, Zerim de Chagir, and Jugdomgi Zerim de Toma de la Anning, Tare Zegu, Puntu, Nampani, Modu, Toma de la Chiri Tunji, Dr. Nara Villa Choki, Modu, English Shuena, Oma Urusuche, Taja, Ukraine, Kiev State University, Yeji Delam Tang, Timde, Dezenam, Yakana Niki, Delam, Urusugi, Ketona, and Gumrambe, Chagel, Shayore, Konagi, and Chalaki Yamin Kolabis Shwajina, and Yarumcheki, Sungu Shadishunu, and Tanashi, and Primitive Zuki, and Urusuda, Arigi, Puta Penju, Nayore, and the Chidi Dani, Saja, Shiri Tunji, Dusnamere, the Shiri Tunji, not a bit like Sogi, what do you do? And then any of the Taringi, Judum, Zegre, Punjo, the any Pangamba, any doctor, Tsering Choezom like, what do English issue? From what the chocolate not to just say that and the third unity Ingenala English Secretary Ma Shushwaji. Dr. Tsering Choezom is an associate fellow at the Institute of Chinese Studies, Delhi. Her current fields of research are Indian and Chinese ethnic minority policies, comparing and contrasting the Indo-Naga and the Sino-Tibetan cases, the Tibetan question in India, internationalization of the Tibet issue, rational origins and outcomes, Dalai Lama's centrality in the Tibetan question. Dr. Choezom received her doctoral degree in Chinese studies on the thesis Applying Negotiation Theory to the Sino-Tibetan Talks, 1979 to 2006, from the Center for East Asian Studies, Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. She did her MPhil at the same university on the thesis Issue of Sovereignty, Ethnicity and Nationality in the PRC, a case of Tibet. She obtained her master's degree in politics with specialization in international relations from JNU and BA in English from Lady Shri Ram College, Delhi University. She also has a diploma in historiography and research methodology from the Indian Council for Historical Research, Delhi, and another diploma in National Development course from Fu Sing Kang College, Taiwan. She earlier worked as the program coordinator, assistant fellow, assistant editor, web administrator at the Indian Institute of Dalit Studies, New Delhi. She was the research officer at the Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies from August 2004 to Feb 2005, and also founded and edited the Tibetan World magazine. Her works have been published in China Report, ICS Analysis, World Focus, Payal, Tibetan World, Peace and Conflict, Hindustan Times, and many other national and international publications. Dr. Choezom was awarded the Best Researcher Award from the Center for East Asian Studies, JNU, and was also the recipient of Rajiv Gandhi National Fellowship of UGC 2000 to 2008. She speaks English, Tibetan, Hindi, Nepali, and Nagamese. That's all about her. Thank you so much.
First of all, I would like to thank TPI, for the invitation. It's a great honor for me to be here, and honestly, this will be the first time that I'm doing such a thing. Quite a great job, actually. Listening to 2 days of conference and summing up, I don't think it's going to be very easy, but I'm going to attempt as best as possible. And I've tried to make points, detailed points on each paper. I won't be going into detail of everything, but if anybody wants to discuss later on, you can contact me. And I also want to put on record my thanks to Yankila for being so perseverant in the hospitality, for the invitation, and also Palden for everything. So, well, basically, I would begin by saying that in any kind of research, topic selection is very important. And I think looking at the variety of papers that were presented over the 2 days conference, it was very impressive. A number of issues were touched, from issues inside China, issues outside, linkages with human rights issues, issues of resistance. There was a lot of also review and monitoring of situation inside Tibet in terms of Chinese policies. Not only that, there was also an attempt to understand how Tibet figures in bilateral relations of India and China. I think I also like the paper on resistance. Particularly I wanted to highlight about, there were 4 papers mentioned, but one was struck out, but the 3 papers on social media, the impact of social media, on ethnic minority representation in the Chinese military, and the paper on remittance and exile. They were very focused, and I think the way the paper was written and presented was very impressive. I think that's the way to go in many senses. I thought I'll not really be polemical. I thought I'll stick to how academic research papers are, and I'll comment along those lines. So usually how we go about in research is literature review becomes one of the core tenets when you begin a research review. What's the existing literature, what has been the kind of scholarly work that has already been taken place on the subject that you're working on. And so what you really do is assess, review and find lacuna in those existing literature, and then you add your own analysis. Or if you have an alternative point of view, then if there's no literature, you can also carry out original research. And I think there was one aspect I found very interesting. For me, this was the first experience listening to Tibetan scholars making presentation in Tibetan as well as in English. So I thought that the language prowess was very good. I'm sorry that I could not understand many of the presentations that were made in Tibetan, so I might not be able to incorporate all the discussions that were made. I'm very sorry about that. But I think language skill is very important. So, and also research, some of the scholars say that for any kind of research, to carry out research, it's very important to have prior knowledge about that subject, or even an intimate experience with that subject. So that kind of passion shows in the kind of papers that were presented over the 2 days. So in terms of literature review, if I could point out the papers that I thought had done good work, was Namatso's work on the Tibetan community in exile. Doma Tsering had also done some amount of research on economic development policies. Namda's paper on remittance was particularly very impressive, also from the perspective of the methodology that she applied. Probably others could not present the methodologies because of paucity of time, but I thought she really put it compactly. One of the important requirements for research also is to challenge existing assumptions. So in that context, and also to problematize what is there in the existing literature or existing discourse. So in that context, I particularly wanted to highlight the 2 papers by Jigme and Tenzin Norgay on the issue of legitimacy of the Communist Party in China, and the 2 resistance related papers on street songs, Lhasa street songs, and fetishism with respect to resistance were also very, very interesting in the sense that they were challenging a lot of assumptions that are there about the resistance movement inside Tibet, or be it in exile. I think there's also a lot of potential in a number of papers that were presented. It did not come out very clearly, but I think there's a lot of potential in the paper on the geopolitical analysis on Sino-Indian relations, the paper on normative contestation by Haddon, the paper on economic colonization, the internal colonialism that's happening inside Tibet. I think there's a lot of scope for further refinement, and also the paper on modernity and diaspora. I think the other aspect about research is to also back up what you have to say, or your argument with a lot of data and empirical analysis. in that respect, I think there were the two papers on economic development. By lieu of the fact that when you work on economics, so you tend to do a lot of data analysis. So the two papers had a lot of rigorous data, and I had a side talk with one of the presentations. I think it was Vasid, I'm sorry, he mentioned that he really looked at the statistical yearbooks in China, statistical yearbook in Tibetan statistical yearbook. So the provincial yearbooks become a very important source when you're analyzing China's economic development policies in Tibet. The paper on social media's impact that had very lot of data on how social media's outreach activities happening around globally also, but in the context also in the context of Tibet. The paper on exile Tibetan community, problems and prospects, I think was Tsering Choezom. His paper was also very policy oriented, a lot of policy prescription there and a lot of data analysis, and he also tried to do a lot of field research and participant observation. I think he's coming from anthropology background, so that's the strength that he has. The paper on remittance and exile again had a lot of data. The paper, of course, I particularly am, because I come from such a background working on ethnic minorities, so the paper on ethnic minority representation in the Chinese military was particularly impressive. I think there's a lot of scope for looking at this kind of representation in all different other sectors, whether in education, employment, labor, and stuff like that. And then another important aspect which I have realized through the years is doing carrying out comparative research. So I'm myself doing a comparison of India's and China's ethnic minority policies. It helps me to contextualize, get some sort of benchmark and yardstick in analyzing and understanding how Chinese are framing the minority policies or the preferential policies from the perspective of how I see the Indian government is doing it. Because we based here on the daily level, we see how the minority reservation policies, affirmative action policies are implemented in India. So comparative sort of analysis becomes very interesting. So I thought there were some papers that had some potential in that perspective. When Zamla's, I think it was Zamla's paper on climate change, he talked about the situation in Ladakh, and he tried to make sense of how we could understand the Tibetan context. The EU-China paper on human rights comparing EU and Chinese perspectives also had some comparative potential. Same as China and the West, the normative context. The paper on remittance again, trying to look at how remittance takes place in other contexts of Kerala and I think Malaysia. So, and the paper on resistance and fetishism also had some reference to comparative context of Africa, and it also referred to the context of Germany and Gandhi. So I think these are very important frameworks that I think some papers try to follow. I think, at the outset, when you're making a presentation or when you're writing a paper, it's very important to frame your objectives and your rationale for doing a particular research when you select your topic. So I thought maybe you've mentioned it in your papers, but in the presentations, some of the presentations mentioned why they wanted to do a particular, take up a particular subject. So the paper on social media had that. The paper on remittance had that. Paper on popular resistance, the street song had that. Paper on climate change had that. So I think it's very important to have to explain, and in a presentation framework you really don't get a sense otherwise. Apart from that, I also wanted to mention, though it might not be possible to mention it in a presentation sort of a format, but it's important as far as possible to mention your sources and to at least acknowledge where you're referring. The reference point has to be there, since many of you are in advanced stages of research. So it's important that you've already read your literature and you're not regurgitating what's already there. Otherwise, it becomes difficult. It also affects your credibility. So that's, I think, very important. And if there's time, I could go into some of the points that I've made regarding the papers. With regard to the paper, there were 4 presentations on China's economic development of Tibet. I thought they were very, I think this topic is something that's very understudied. I think maybe Andrew Martin Fisher and Goldstein are the few people who have tried to look at these issues. I think it's impressive that there are about 4 or 5 papers that are looking at this topic. So I thought I'll make some suggestions about, though you all are all looking at your own respective particular subjects, but there might be scope to expand, or if somebody wants to carry out new research on this subject, how I think there might be potential for adding certain aspects. So one perspective would be, as far as China's economic development policies in Tibet are concerned, to look at aspects about the policies, how differential are they in terms of targeting particular sections of the society, and how it creates or minimizes intergroup disparity. So in this context, I would suggest some conceptual sort of approaches, which is looking beyond the approach of human rights. You could take on the discourse of equality, literature related to fairness of treatment and social justice. You could also look at it from the developing framework, ask questions like development for whom and by whom. So you bring in questions about participation and beneficiary. And you could also look at it from the perspective of social inclusion and exclusion. And Martin Fisher has worked on this to some extent, but this would be a very alternate way of looking at issues other than the usual way of looking at human rights issues and stuff. And also, I think many of you missed the fact that when you're describing, okay, when you're looking at particular issues of China's housing, resettlement issues, or China's tourism-related policies, or China's the share of Tibetans in the labor market, or Tibetan share in employment, or I don't think anybody really focused on the education sector as such. But it's important to understand that these areas, the Tibetan areas in China, whether it's Tibet Autonomous Region or the prefectures, have special guarantees under the Chinese constitution, under the autonomy guidelines. So it's important to have that reference point in mind. So all universal policies in China are not necessarily applicable to the Tibetans. But again, this is an assumption that we are making. So sometimes, as in the memorandum, it says that the policies that are meant actually for even the normal or non-autonomous provinces that have policies, for autonomous regions there are even like harsher policies in terms of referring legislations to the NPC and stuff like that. So challenging assumptions is very important. And within this perspective of autonomy related issues, then I think nobody focused on the aspect of China's preferential policies regarding particular groups in China, minority groups. So actually, in the case of Tibet, you see a reversal. Though there might be preferential policies, and we really don't know to what level or to what extent it's being implemented. It's important to probe that, of course. But also, there are preferential policies actually for the non-minorities in Tibet. So, like if there are Hans or the other minority groups in Tibet. So, for resettlement in Tibet, or if they take up jobs in Tibet, they have special policies in terms of the hukao does not apply to them in many senses. The hukao law, which is seen as a problem in overall China, but in Tibet it's relaxed for the settlers. And also in terms of there are special policies in terms of when if the Chinese people come into Tibet and take up jobs, when they retire, they would get special benefits. So this also has impact on demography in many senses. You could look at one could look at these factors, and also of course Andrew Martin Fisher has particularly looked at the issue of education and employment nexus. So many of the times we hear that when the Chinese government policies are implemented in Tibet, and we talk about the issue of demographic imbalance because of in-migration of non-Tibetans into Tibet, they would bring up the issue about human resources, lack of human resource skills inside Tibet. So we have to talk about the issue of education employment nexus. This also has many identity, because many of you are talking about issue of identity culture. At the level of education, when there would be indirectly Tibetans who take up Tibetans as a subject or do not study Chinese would lose out in the, when they go out in the job market. So that's how this whole nexus plays out. So these kind of things would be interesting aspects to look at. And when you're talking, when the Chinese government says that this lack of human resource skills, so in the last so many years, what has it done for capacity and capability building of the Tibetans? So particularly, somebody could look at particular skill building programs. There are anti-poverty programs, but these are very generalized sort of frameworks. One has to look into very particular issues. And there's also a lot of discussion on subsidy policy of China. So according to Fisher, almost 99% of Tibet's economy is subsidized. And I'm not sure how this whole analysis figures, when you talk about GDP figures and stuff like that. Many a times we hear that as scholars say that we need not really take figures at face value, or it's often inflated and stuff like that. So there's need to really go into details of these data and these subsidy policies and how is it really trickling down at the level of the people. And one of the things I usually do in my research, I try to look at also structural factors that impinge on policy decisions, or whether it is even the issue of resistance or anything, any sort of variable. So in that sense, I would also ask you to look at structural factors that would impinge on Chinese leadership decision to develop Tibet economically. So we could look at larger economic situation internationally, how that impinges on China's economic decisions domestically. Somebody talked about the whole economic slump and the decline of the export-led economy of China. So there's a lot of now focus inland, and there's a lot of focus now also at the peripheral inland Chinese regions, but also at the western regions. So how this whole process is playing out, it would be interesting to do research on these aspects. And in this particular framework, you could also look at labor-related issues in China, in the sense that because of everybody knows that there's rising demand for higher wages in the SEZs, in the coastal areas where most of the industries are located. So now most of these industries are now relocating inside. So and also because of environment-related issues, because of pollution-related factors, stringent pollution-related regulations in many of these cities. So they're moving to 3-tier cities and stuff. So that would also have impact on the issue of maybe they would be able to absorb more Tibetan labor, and there could be all sorts of dynamics that come into play. So it's interesting to look at these various developments happening within China. So structural factors, I think, would be interesting aspect to look at. And many of you also spoke about urbanization-related issues in China and also in Tibet. In this perspective, I would ask you to look also at local leadership imperatives, and some of you hinted at it, and I'm also integrating many of the discussions that took place during the conference session. So in this context, you could try to link the aspect of how in China, because it's a one-party state, and there's also how the party leaders from grassroots level they get promoted. So when they want to move up in the hierarchy of the party, they need to perform. There's a lot of performance-related promotion indicators. So in that context, local leadership imperatives come into play when they're doing a lot of organization, because they need to perform, they need to show economic, they need to show increase in GDP in the respective provinces and prefectures and cities and counties. So and then in this again, I'm sorry, I'm going really trying to link up issues. So when you talk about urbanization and local leadership imperatives, then you could also then go further back and further macro from the perspective of China's fiscal policy since the 1990s, early 90s or mid 90s. They've had reform in their fiscal policies. As a result, earlier much of the time the central government was much of the revenues the local government would keep for themselves, But after the reforms, the 70% of local, I think, if I'm not wrong, the revenues would go to the state. So the local government would only keep 30% of their budget revenues. So as a result, there is also shrinking of the local fiscal revenues. So as a result, they need to create alternative avenues for generating resources. So urbanization is one aspect, and related to this is the issue of land acquisition in policies in China. So if you declare a particular area as a city, and in China you don't need, when you declare a city, it does not mean that you create a new city. You can just declare an existing area, which is a village or anything, you just declare it as a city, and then development would happen later on. But when you declare a particular area as a city, then you, the local leader has right to acquire that land, and then the issue of corruption and everything comes into play. So then that's why you see Dharamshala also spoke about how many of the prefectures in Tibet have been converted into cities lately. So then of course there's also linkage with corruption and environment, and the issue of mining comes up in these acquired lands. And further scope, I thought in these, I'm not sure, I didn't get track of time. Is there somebody moderating? Do I have some time, or I can? I also wanted to speak in Tibetan, but I knew I'll really get sidetracked. I stuck to English. So specific areas I thought to suggest in this area on economic development in Tibet is you could look at specific provinces also. Like many of the research was very broad-based. The period was also very I think very huge, and I think it happens with often the early researchers. I also had this problem. So if possible, in your further next endeavor, you could try to limit your time period and limit your research focus and limit your research in terms of geography, limit your areas. And one of the areas I could possibly suggest is looking at Yunnan as an interesting case study, where why there have been so many protests and emulations in other parts of Tibet, why not? Why hasn't there been in Yunnan? So some say that maybe Yunnan has been more prosperous, economically more developed. They have been more the development has been more participatory. So this answers some questions related to development and instability. Somebody had raised this question. And also, I already mentioned the issue about labor and migration and the issue of Hukao. There's a lot of discussion on Hukao in overall China, the reform of the Hukao, but how this has played out in Tibet has been very differently. And there's also a lot of news about pairing up of the Tibetan cities with the other Chinese cities. So this policy has been really touted as a very important achievement, the policy of pairing up, policy of 8 cadres. So these are interesting issues that one could look up in there when one is doing policy-related papers, not really research, but short policy-related papers. So yeah, I mean, I had points on the papers on the legitimacy. I had points on the Tibet factor in Sino-Indian relations. But I think I'll end it there, and I think if somebody wants to discuss it later, we could do it due to paucity of time. I'm grateful to you for your attention, and I hope I made some intervention. I'm not. Yeah, thank you so much.
Next one is speaking Tibetan. So I'll try to test the best. 우리나라 나시 남부 공화 때문에 돈에 소닥하는 것을 일나마 제가 내 수단 제수요 유 아니 자신이 비간에 우리나라에 당에 마주다 수지비단 한 다른 게 또도 돈에 다 말한 왜 salon session basınamento ya asing escola sobre start number 2 da dose da nimanie de la part socio sobre namje tenju tu wat no bane di lenge de kon number 2 part dolen nan kure akar inji kema intellectual history Tibet kongi de sayu rabata ende dire yungre sam da sonza de dinange de samala nge ngabju da soci bi Azan de unde debula maranchi pipi bari sraju ina nga botum ne kaji bi desa ta ina na bu arsul nyapsin na ne at tumdi na ngare ip dat arsul pebat imbe jena ne tungre de sonda di tola maranchi ta de sraju ai sidang maran de bo ko de ina ti ta arsul de tola maranchi nyapsin tola maran ni ngi bi chayin 그래서 저는 나부터 이제 냠지들 백그리가 되는 거란 제주 법을 그랬습니다. 나부터 이제 망보다 우리 망보라 수십나는 냠신나는 좀진나가 쓰나면 세번나 같은 거 계속 따지고 그래서 저는 좀 지나нула 마사 아 대체서 아 베이스 세션은 내가 지금 그랬습니다. 그러나 가려 봐서라 인상은 왜 지도나 이게 너무 트랑크나시 아야 살론나네 에베 담라투 여기 딱 로리는 마도 보리 나도 상조 그거 좀 보이래 나마다 무슨 별나 뜻하다 이게 그런 거 가지고 가라 먼저 그런 거 갖는다 무슨 반이냐 지금 떠오는 너무 되지 이제 같이 가르쳐 지금 그게 준주 대표나 그거나 근데 냠시는 게 드디어 냠시 왔다 research terus plan hindi terus plan sila kompore ina pada biti mantu kuruta di pesira mantu santo juaje mantu isante mantu chini tacci karas maran kube chizo tanore tambuli and turun lo mango sita ane ese mango sita tacci kube ya di chalena mantu kowai tayo ba rinde mantu kunjun to ada Tsering Choezom yaga chisi bi Japan Institute of Chinese Studies din anda ko ke bo ewa Zema, jadi ringan tu. Sudah dapat baca, orang berbaca tidak jual nama kodiah pun. Dia sudah dapat invest dapat kalau sudah di macam tu nama dapat orang bersenam itu hewan mau itu sangat juga jadi. Masa jam tu cuma ni, cuma tu sih ya jam orang apa jika nanti selepas ada solat kalau dapat membaca kita itu 독서는 배배나 나한테 가르쳐줘. 맞잠바 음람바 선생님도 다 가르쳐. DST 스콜라도 그렇죠. 당도도 세우는도 아마 군주가 나한테 시리레오니 다 그렇죠. 디지간지 그거 그런데 계속 이거 뭔가 시리레오니 다 맞죠. 지도 나나. 음람바지. 그게 그러면서 이제 꾸준히 배도나지. na tela talent of response ras ya pala sam response da na tu jiso na na abu na shi ke wan pura pa kabe me na na tu tu ko ma le ma ta tu sa le da tam tu de kala na be dwa ale te asure da na tu shi le dong ki uram be ko na ma te tu de ro che ba na tu ro ti ha pu ni don tu ne na da pa tu shi le la de uram de da asure ko le shi Lomyewa, ni shuzani zalaki scholarship dauti lomye pisha. Dinane tat hundu urambe lake tat ya kane chalena shibaje. Antenda juni suje tenda lopno nashi bajesha. Suntu jukyome. Ana shi pekimne urambe lomye ajo lopno ne kuchi kuchi. Support us on the tension. 근데 시리레오네 우런데 거기 익산이 되자 유동 촌에 된다거든. 대등을 배워야 된다. 소소나 계획이. 아니 나는 근데 그것도 우런가 같은 저기 균세 아니 중이 된다 나시 말이야. and then some to Kumulu, and as a Putin, Urambi Logan, Tujinam, Chikmaja, number 3 was a Tujit Noble System Baresha. I am feel never become a cinnamon of President Pelena net to do me, the third and the never become a human roses and feel. Ilana to see the Logan, the society unit and the Logan System Baresha. But that legislation and that they not do it, half over there. You don't know, the Dana is Alakan. In the China, I read the David name was in the PhD cassette, 20 cassette, and then you just Adela trust me, so you finish in the Logan, I say not to get to Scottish Avina. There's nothing of good how to say. You don't know that I want to not to summer, however, the poetry was there. And then the Kundugi to the number of the Jury and about the Kansin Pola, all of Yansi Pedigore, and I see Persians in the middle of the Zuki Kasha, Sierra Tola, Mixe, Monshet, and Tubuta, and Tusi, Nango, and number the Dutch, Indian, the Sheshra to me. That's it. Number 2, Rizikansi, the Tundi. The Shevas and researchers in editor to sing it and that March and to Chiso to Tola, she and Teresa, to the average number 2, that is such what I'm with here, that is to Sarah. Jimbe, I take it. Number 2, Kumje Inare, Okotomo Inare, I said, something for you to that. She take it and that environment, ecological, and Titola Peshe in Pinantuna. Yahoo Rosan did not get something that Siri don't some to them. I see something like Kana Chiludi, who you can, is the environment, ecological, Kana Tedagro. He told him not to beg it, that's what don't say it. You cannot say that contribution that this number, they keep very few to it. He told him not to take so much time to Rosan. Since he died, the perpetrator, all I'm not to complain like that. This number, they get to the question by a contribution. Something that the children to Tola, and I'm going to do what I'm summit to help to get the issue to Tola. I'm doing a Madame Tola, the Belcola, agency will make Belcola to position to the bottom of 2 years. I'm good as to this setting. I say, Neil, and bet sure they are any person. Our attention to the Tebet 이진이를 때문에 주어지고요. 고시세되고. 아니 근데 비준데 대화면 여러 사람들에 대한 비준을 디나다 아주 배배를 좀 넘어 챙겨라. 리네체와 마다 중앙나서 리네체에 나는 소리가 그래서 매 어디서 전부는 난 체비추로 디톤에 맞으시면 되게 붙어거래. 인디비 멘티 엔저 치마도가 그래서 소바디에 대한 나자 타긴 나자 님과 타긴 다 되게 you Mongo, Maran, said that Chimoto, Motto, Sonta, Rifunto, Polan, Pochi, or the Domina, the case in the Medicine, they put the fishing by it. And the super thing with the Motolo, put the Yanta for us. I was complaining, she came, universal response for a combat against the game of the Uti, Yanta for his name, the consul name from good. At the bottom of the Sumir, that thing I like some sort of that. In that sense, I think that you could take it. Now, to show you that I need to tolerate a Shagian, and that's Yamsis research, and that's the moment today. And number 2, the big part is that what I'm here for, I'm just good at what. In that all I am, only with the Mudana, in their power, just and the laptop in the good to Yahoo Blossom. That's it, Parasol. Then around the Puyudina, around the Sama, she the Piocha, she secondly. Nyamsi Chipo Mare, not to them, they get to Chidan shares to get within the church at them. Report number 2 and what's much to talk to season, not to share the Tola, or the summit financial education to Rare. She used the I gave Cheva in she is in the Shajas in the years, like you guess it. Shajas in the first she said that she down to catch him. The years in the Nangi. She said that Nangi Yundin catching Nangi Yundin Karisigo Sena, Zuma used to be job at the Teva Meva, some the Ninja Tempatilla, 아니 지금 근데서 이제 선장 대지 이 돌아가는 거지 혹시 그 계신 냠시 군한테 연대 찍고야 대바에 겠다고 말하죠. 그런데 그러면 벌써 하드 그러면 분두가는 걸베딩 군하스 이제 돌아가고 지금 공부시 그 계신 분에 주도 나부 분두 걸었고 봐. 말한 주다 지금 계획이 하고 여러 상주 지금 있다. 파베 구구다 라테 잡았으면 아메 푸 라테 잡았는 주도 나부 분도 여러 상주 지금 이렇게 걸어 연습해 되죠. 나랑 참에 나집에서 나랑 참에 뒤돌아 나랑 예전 시기에 계신 분들 내가 얘기했던 게 보면 같이 여러 분들이 얘기했던 게 이런 선사한테 그 시리즈를 문제로 진다게 야가 많이 껍데기를 좋아하죠. 그것도 껍데기를 껍데기 돌아서 전제가 가능해 가지고는 구슈 되고 그래. 문제 거도 타이트로는 생각도 임바스나 그래. 빠지 가르쳐 이게 그런 시스템을 다 되고나 그때 중에 틱 시작되는 프랑스로 부셔야 되고 어떻게 머리랑 같이 되고 문제 가래서는 미치가 되는 거지 그게 미치를 해야 한도 સમજતા 봐 그래서 다시 분주 걸로 갖다 준 것들이 템버시 시스템 렌스에 들다 라다다 되는 소소상비를 템버시 거래 근데 그 최종 템버시 글로벌 프로듀스고 마다 라다다 되는 템버시 때 가래서는 이게 디스프레이 되고 그대로 준다. 그러나 이제 시스템 잡아도 이 다른 게 같은 거 돌아야 도스마 쉬어야 되는 변경이 도스마 미치가 된다. 그러나 그것을 팬다가 이 증을 알아서 로켓 바이 미치는 내가 차대. 개버트 좀 돌아. 부탄 자고 싶지. 이런 선사 네 나다는 댄스 멤버십 소수 장주라 이런데 템버데 템버 통고데 가르 시고서는 여러 상교된 템버스 비대버네. 그대로 이것이 여러 상황에 들어와. 이 상보다 지단다 들어와. 대세처럼 잡는 거지. 이 약보시 상보주는 이 마음으로 미치 세나시 약보였어. 세지 지도 가지고 통도와. 그때 지도가 세 마가이도 통매요. 맞대 지도 있나데 야가 지도 있나 아메리카 그때 야가 세가 마가이도 세가 통매요 말아. 미 약보 지도 가지고 가보다 통치가. 이제 선사 여러 상주 여러 상주도 된 거였어. 템버시는 이거 이것도 전부 다 인계된 거였어. 말한 그 8분 몇분은 남바산계 들어 이때 가서 해봤다 이제 지금 미래지 송상 전부 다 인계된 거도 그 인보로 와. 그래서 전부 다 인계된 거였어. 이 전부 이번에 되었어. 숨버때 파산 인도도 된 거였어. 인도 된 거. 이제는 답도시라래 소소는 거 때문에 쇼사래. 공부해요 말이야. 이제 나도라 된 공도 시거는 슝 주고 정부는 몸 주고 당신 이제를 때문에 순서를 막 뻗치고 그냥 뻗어다 나게니 가라다 나게 나죠 나게 나와서 먼저 저를 대표로 이게 뽑아 셋 컴피텐스 그도 가는 거지 이게 지금 뭐래 아니 시버티 전대가 왔어 지속 가와이는 대학가 내가 최종도 그런 거는 정부식 계신 무시오래 정부 재원은 공학 딱 소설 정부 재원은 이 가르치는 맛이는 이거 계획도 대세 자기가 뒤치죠. 근데 요즘 이딩에 나버서를 중국식으로 자국식으로 나 로겐 바이. 예 대한테 연대대 나라 요식으로 봤다. 말한도 참에 뒤돌아 대전시 말한 집에 이 상만 지중요 말이야. 개와다 지금 참에 뒤돌아 대전다 한지 연대대 소수 규다 자기 너는 자기 계시는 그래. 이래서 내 편도 보내주고 이 연대대 나라 요새는 그냥 뒤집고 맞다. 그냥 걸어 좀 많이 맞다. 마치 연대 시대 나라가 내가 봐서 너는 자기 미시 되나. 이래서 선생이 다 드리고 거편에 이 쉬는 게 무슨 살아다는 것도 개원돼. 같이 있어서래. 남아라 가가가빈 차를 다 이나 미치가 편나 편도 받죠. 이래서 선생이 내게 된다 도도디 어서 잡을 좀 그렇게 걸어 양도 때와 여러 상주디 같이 그래. 마 보트나 말한도 셈을 자주 코데 오는 것들에게 대바시나 그 같은 게 비슷해 같은 때문에 많이 되는 그래서 소자들의 그 tâm lý学가 그래서 드린데 구슈 이 공부를 잘하나 미세게 그게 같은 지 냠신난다 보라는 어떻게만 그런 센서들 또 사실 제가 나서 공부를 잘 어제 그때 왜 이제 그 약속을 받고 하는 인플라이트 거냐 감정나게 꼬지와 이랑도 가는 자주 대전다 면은 잡히게 개침을 그래서 남부 산지에서는 면은 잡히게 개침을 면은 좀 팽거만 소소 내가 하고 현재 제가 담기 팽기라고 말이야 이제 정도 보라 그래서 난 상담 받아서는 그때 넘버 2 공업 디멘션 대표가 나중에 제수였는데 또 우리는 여기 수준님 지금 어디 나가는 일다가 두시다 다리나 아주 이제 개와 특별한 안에 깨졌게 좀 고급나가 두시기 스페셜리
공원 전쟁 다링기 주동 담시에 대한 초와 친구가 수마들라 도체다 네 다링기 드림 타마티 베이스팅 심상기 겐지 쇼바 겐트리 양기라게 네 토질을 볼 수 있어요 이 아니 만한 거에다 단다 차게기 베이스야 본다 네 야페로지 겐지 간텐다 겐지 간텔라다 하르멘 길
잠시와도 아무리 부지세슈 길에는 시간에 담보가 아니 나서 배기 나서 무슨 배짱이 문제 있어서 아니 반대시경서 아니 제대 처음에는 아니 아주기 정도디 계집전제 지나네 아니 되마 정도기 건데도 정말에 아니 문제 담시 나오더라 부지세슈이 아니 아주기 죽동 제거기 건데도 건강 박혀 Tsering Choezom la, ani nganzo jugdom ke tamshe nawa ani number ke nyamship nangyo ke kasa chetung dege da ani morang ke shimju nawe ni to do ke kyanzla dos tong nawa de la tse shweni anashi ani shiri tungji rodong ara ke cho ani de nganzo ke begu shwana shi ani de chenga jugdom jelo bas pheo ma se ani nangdo ke galop in company so simple de galop nangdo ke galop nawa de la tse shweni 당시 내내 방기 genjin se benani register yong la ne saring ngadu nimani gi sabjo ring la ne tindu no de tuche shwain haba ko sada la tabe nang ke majen da mayo da kamal tuche shwain 당시 an sundu ka ke yangda ke tindu no ani yangda ke tadam ba shwain 당시 ani parpala ya tuche shwain 또 다른 때 생기다고 아니 손들라 패배 야나라 아니 그런 것가 다 좋네 나 민도 주와이나 아니 뱅글로 파이스 라톨로파 구즈라타 예베니 야가 위슝게 톨롭 톨롭라체 아니 자르탄 나 예베니 야르 위슝게 아니 투라 갑심체 당시 바나라스 힌두 투라 갑심체 마드라스 투라 갑심체 join nirogi tulla kapsimo dna plebe ani bogape namakhamalo nyamship nawata ani khajine ani sosegi nyamship ki tukdedi ani tamshe nawadela ani ningtakone tuche shwai tangdashi pegi sichu nyamship khangi ani nyamship anokane sosu nyamship jeshi thola tamshe nawadela tuche shwai 아니 fondu nimeni fondu ki jinda Tibet Government Foundation la tuche 아니 fondu ki sunge da ani karbe nambala tuche fondu di la mo da ani pegi sibji nyamshi kan ke leje ne ani chadu nyamde na tuche de da ani chapji ko ani fondu di ke jodi ba ki thonge to shenge ani anju ke peshu nyamshi ba discourse la da things to plan ani 수고를 챔피 아니 사자 우문도네 자리 나와데 투제스웨이 다나시 안주 수준 냠식한 게 레제 숨네 아니 아주 레제도 아바 파르도 두시 제세도 아니 그나저 게게 페도 tunju 나와데 투제스웨이 다나시 아니 아주 군주 넘바 페페 나게 아니 shonge kalwa nira 투제스웨이 entonces se le rimde la bizamia ngara shuru Shuswazi Sway, and Narakade, Naranzo, the Puri, Nashi, and the Propson, you can someone yet to still a zone, and Susu Purgi, President David, they don't come on, so seems sure that someone the second member, regression, and Yamship Jenny, you did the David on the President of something now, in Papa Gaucho, the Dugan and something around the Kunji member, Kelly 첼리바디 유타타 이렇게 말해 sampuan 다링아라 유타 메두스데 우스 통네 네스 나랑이 삼보데 남비셰 자초데가 그마스 가우초 투셰스와이 다링 아주 냠식하는데 다른 좀 마스 제만으로 양게들이 통투지 소고쉐기 베제쉐이 아니 이 통투디기 뒤에 아니 그나저라 양명사에다 아니 진배 아니 로카신 나라니 Maharaj Bhai ne chigi ni member Maharaj Ram ki tasoso ki ne deji deji lane chetwe ki tanadi ondu ki thadis nami do ni maung ki tengde do chinji se de ni je nam do sobur chimpan na ni thamalo nimba ta ba na phal la phe bore tenda so bore ni tende deje na ma de ban di che chenga deje tam ne susu ra ta su tewa susu ge ka ta mi tende na da de rang ji ki samani 도중에 감시 나와들니 타고 도지 수야이 무튼에 나라 삼바라 땅으로 가르도스는 아주 이 건조는 첼레바다 켈레바다 아니 이직한테 놓던나게 그래서 잠깐 용차 메도다 가르치게 되더라나 그러나 베기 나 lok종데 가서 촉지가 되네 미기 미시 아주 베베기 미시디 촉지가 되네 미시 촉지가 되네 미시디 식신 배주 가능성보다 알아서 개가들 미리 기사를 하는 배주 가능성보다 뒤에 또 거기에서 봐도 미기 미시 마당한테 말이야 한 투지에 못하는 아니니까 또 lok종 야고나로 나 수수가 맞대는 공공의 수고나 시리 그냥저 내 신바니 빈체다 조금만 쓰면다 못되니까 lok종 나고디 계신분에 남편의 수고하려면 등다시 가디 누가 타고 시럽 성질을 하네 요거 원해가지고 소소 메리에서 얘가 되라 아저 처음에 습주들이 제가 멤버다 된다 하네 그럼 제가 하네 소소님 식도로 유림 토론에 그래서 다들 그거에 흑색이 계신분의 상고도는 그냥 좀 맞게 그냥 좀 신발 빙가다 정말로 나네 나는 시 무슨 lok종 나와서 맞대 lok종이 팬데 대양아라 지서랑라 가서 현대 슈도지 남편아라 너무 된다게 나랑 대박인 거 사는 대박 미지가 엄청 교육하는데 그걸 빈줄 조대지 이날에 이 그런 게 연결돼서 나랑 미리다 나랑 얘가 근데 현대 슈에다 배질마다 나니 여가 무슨 처벌 lok종 비좀 처벌 요 육변적 비좀 처벌 약속담을 해마도 아니 내가 제가 하는 게 믿을 수 있어 지도도 네 부스들도 얘기다 소소 개가 메리르니 계신도 제보스들 저우지 차고를 있는 나라들 나의 경제 나이스나 나라도 간다 베이비까지 저기를 간다 아주 그 장제가 수지를 간다 나와서 지금 이 인상 고고는 된다 요래 나라도 미리 소소 미리 소소 개가 소소랑게 그 마지막 치맥이 제일 말아 대신데 나라도 계신 거라서 개가 장제 이거 넣지 있나 아니 소소 lok종이다 소소 벤조에다 미리다 지서 셴바라 벤데 좀 나지고 나가 나라도 지서나 요거 얘 당하네 소소 지서 나 배지 제일 계신 것도 내가 상상하게 그가 뒤에 나서라 되고 대화 쉬어 마음바 지나서 lok종 뒤에 깜빡 쓰네 아니 개가 kunji shumle yune chale na ma de soso ge ke ne kanji soso ki nishure soso ki sheja yune de soso miri ta de ka ta shidi shidwa ji sara na beje na na si ki ta ko de be shwe ke chena
삼바 아니 군전도 양 알렌도 아니 고발 소소티야 베로티슈에 그룹도
그룹이 나서들다가 MCB 국사부터네 수신하는 직하시시 나 아까 저들 그룹들인데 망고지 내가 페어래 내가 나 수준 염식하게 된데 어디 먹고 나야 되는 거나 염수들인데 갈아왔다 주에라 그거 먹고 좋았다가 닝 타번에 sambilada ni angila leje sama suju nyamshi ka ki leje sama da ni ta pa to to sama ge chap shi tu chen na shwe yi ne chik ta di manzo yakut di yakulo ne ga sum ka don cha to kai sana ta manzo be je ta yangila yangila so na shi to ne den de ne ko ne shunge ge lok chon da be ta ta de to no su ki nyamshi chi ne kya ma ma to to ki kechumbo de so de de ga na ta kapsiju nyamshi kangeni ngarangi tsoya lani shunge nyamshi nangi pe kyapkope yakunda to district sanguto neni neta ngaranzo nangu yena de kalorta ngazol tinjape yakochi ragi do ta ngaran do chashona nzo changma ga zanda chikwa ke kya gi lokku de yore ina kunzola ta nzo na shi chok kawa ga sala shiaga toya de ke kuka payo mo ta nzo yang ya chane ke ma de ina ta beba rangi king ji na che king ji ki che na nzo la de tinja tu mango chi tu yore de ki to ne gi ta kuka de che na nzo le mise la kuka de che ra de des che sa de tu che na chi ta ya aram so na gu ge na la da digi ngi mo shui ta de ki khala orta so chen de mas yuna ya ko stik ta nzo na gu la pa tu chu che da be ge ne dun de ka tu chi ge chi mo yime da nyamshi ki che do ya kal tumen di kala ta research che ki ya to be khar kari yime di ha ko che nzo na gu la ya danda chi chun so na so na she nangu la pa ta cha ga da nangu ne pa ta nge che ki to ya hamna khari yime de ki nzo ke danda de chu du de chue ki ni au ko chon sa ne ngi ki ta de la nyamshi nangi ki thame ko cha ki che do ni ta pa ne to she na she